Today we're going to install coilovers on this 34 Ford of John Buck's. So he's had this car on the road for about 27,000 miles now. And when we were at the Roadster show a couple of weeks ago, we were kind of talking, and he said, you know, the car just didn't quite feel as good as it used to. And so when we were talking, I says, hey, let's put some fresh shocks on it. Let's see how the car works. Let's see if we can make an improvement. So what we're going to do is we're showing you how we do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the at-ride height length of the shocks that are on the car so we can determine if it's the correct length for the car. So follow along as we do this installation. We measured the shocks at ride height length, so the car's sitting on the ground. The shocks measure 13-inch center to center. So now I'm going to measure the open length of the shock. So I'm going to take my tape measure, I'm going to go from my center bolt at the upper side to our center of our lower bolt, and we have 13.5 inches. So we're going to talk a couple of things about when we're installing the shocks, what we need to do. So what we're going to talk about is our at-ride height length and how we determine that. And then we're also going to talk about thrust bearings. I know I talk about these a lot, but the thrust bearings make it a lot easier to adjust your coilover because it reduces the friction between the spring and your spring seat. The thrust bearings are pretty simple. It's a roller style bearing. So what we're going to do is we put grease between the rollers, put the lower race, the upper race, and then the spring sits on top of it. And by doing that, it eliminates the friction, so it makes it a lot easier to adjust your coilover shock. The spanner wrench, this is our ALD01. So the spanner wrench is hinged in the center for different size spring seats, but also it's designed for a notch style, not the spring seat that has a hole in it. So what we're going to do is use that to adjust the spring for our ride height. So as you move the spring seat up, we'll raise the car. As you move it down, we'll lower the car. When we're setting our springs up to begin with, I have a couple things I call rules and guidelines. So when the shock is at free length, if we have 3 inches of shaft or 3 inches of travel exposed, what we want to do when the car is sitting at ride height is we want to have 2 inches of shaft exposed. That way 1/3 of the travel is going to be used for extension, 2/3 is going to be used for compression. Now the guideline that we like to do is when we have our shock and we're setting it up before we put it on the car, we want to put 1 inch of preload on the spring. And there's a little confusion here. I'm not referring to how many threads are showing below the spring seat. What it is the measurement from the top of the spring to the bottom of the spring. So this particular spring is a 9-inch 200 spring. So to put 1 inch of preload on it, I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to be able to measure from this point to this point, and we will have 8 inches of spring. And so that means it's ready to go on the car. When we look at our spring, we'll see it says Aldan American and it says 9-200. So the 9 refers to the free length of the spring at 9 inches. The 200 is the spring rate. So this being a lightweight 34 Roadster, we're going to use the 200-pound spring. That's a great place to start. It's tried and true for us, and that's what we recommend. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to take the spanner wrench. I'm going to use it so that I can turn my spring up so I get my 1 inch of preload on it. Included with the Aldan American shocks is going to be this little card here, and on the back of it is a QR code. And so what that'll do is take you to all of our instruction sheets. And then we also include a little Allen wrench, and we're going to use this Allen wrench so that we can tighten the set screw on our spring seat, and that will lock the ride height. So when Aldan American assembles the coilover shocks with the springs, we will use copper-based anti-seize. So there will be copper-based anti-seize on the spring seat. On the lighter weight springs, it's not so much having to add any additional anti-seize, but on a heavier spring, if you're going to do a little bit more adjustment, you may want to put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads above the spring seat. So as you rotate it, you'll pull the anti-seize into your spring seat. Today we're going to do some shock talk. So this is our double adjustable coilover and our double adjustable smooth body shock. So we have a compression knob on the bottom, we have a rebound knob on the top. It'll allow you to adjust the compression and the rebound separately so that when you're driving down the road, if you feel it's got a little too much compression, it's a little harsh, you can reduce it and soften it up. Or if you're like going around corners and you're doing a little bit more aggressive driving and you feel you need a little bit more control in the front, we can put a little additional compression in it. Now on the rebound side, so what happens is it controls the bounce in the car. So when you're driving down the highway and you've got a lot of movement with the chassis up and down, typically that means it does not have enough rebound control. So what's nice is we can take our knob here, we can turn the rebound up and add additional rebound control. So on our adjustment, when you go full counterclockwise is your softest position. As you increase the dampening and go to full firm, that'll be 11 positions clockwise to full firm. On the bottom compression knob, there's 6 numbers on it, and there's also a flat spot that we've put on the knob. So the flat spot is going to be the number 1 position. So when your number 1 and your flat spot is at the top, that is the softest, and as you rotate it, it will increase the dampening. Now, this is a barrel valve, so as you rotate it, it'll go 360 degrees, and so once you go past 6, you're back at number 1, the softest setting. We're now going to install our coilover shocks. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rebound knob, I'm going to turn it full counterclockwise. I'm going to use that as my starting point. This is a lightweight car. We will probably find that the sweet spot for this adjustment is going to be probably around 3 clicks from full soft. And on the bottom, I'm going to start off with the number 1, the softest setting, and then we can get the car out on the highway, drive it, make adjustments, and find our happy place. I am now going to torque the bolts down to 75 foot-pounds. So now we're going to remove the front shocks and we're going to replace it with our double adjustable shock. So we've got a rebound knob on the top and a compression knob on the bottom. The upper bolt is a 7/16 bolt. So we have our 7/16 sleeve in here. If you need a 7/16 sleeve, just let us know and we can set the shock up with 7/16. So we're going to put our bolt in first. There was a sleeve that went on this upper bracket. That went together like that. On the lower side, we have a shouldered bolt, so it's got a 5/8. So we have a 5/8 sleeve here. We've now installed the front shock here. So this is a double adjustable, so we have compression on the bottom, rebound on the top. Again, like on the rear of the car, this is a fairly light car, so we're gonna set it at 1 on the front for compression. And on the rebound side, I'm gonna go full counterclockwise, 1, 2, 3 clicks. And that's what I'm gonna use as my starting point. We've now finished the installation. We're gonna take it out and do some testing, have a little bit of fun with it before we give it back to the owner.